These kinds of events of people walking by and saying, "Is this your strawberry ice cream?" and you say, "Wow, I was just thinking about that. Ooh, what's going on? How did that happen? Where did that come from?" Or you're thinking about your sister and you're just having a conversation with her. You haven't seen her in 5 years, and you go to the phone and she's calling, or endless numbers of these kinds of synchronistic events that almost like you have a collaboration with fate they become more frequent, they become more noticeable, they aren't something that you say, "Oh, how could this happen? Isn't that interesting?" or "It's just chaos," because there's no such thing as chaos,
no,
is there?
It's only the appearance of chaos. There is nothing in chaos. It's like when you go to, say, let's say you go to New York City, and the best example I can use of chaos is Grand Central Station. Okay,
yeah.
So everybody is going hither and thither every which way and what, and you think it's chaotic. But each person is going to a specific destination. And not only that, if you were to announce a track change from track 11 to track 10, you'd see a further intensification of the chaos. But in fact, it is an elaboration of the underlying order. So in all this seeming chaos, there's an underlying order. And it's not only that you should go and get flowers wherever you go. The Vedic expression is, when you're in that state, then wherever you go, flowers will bloom.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for them. You choose where you want to go, and the flowers will bloom on your path.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, I know that. I do. And I've seen it happen, and I believe you can take this kind of consciousness and make it work not only for you, but for those around you, or for the world. That the thoughts, the images, the vision, the ability to manifest, to create what you want for yourself. You see, if enough of us in the world believe, for example, in a nuclear holocaust, just taking it to something that affects all of us, and certainly all of our children who are going to inherit this place from it. If enough of us believe that exists, doesn't it? I mean, that's a consciousness. And if enough of us believe it, we will collectively begin to act upon that consciousness, that fear, if you will. Because fear is really, to me, there's like fear and love in there. I mean, hate isn't the opposite of love. Fear is the opposite of love. When you eradicate the fear, like if I'm afraid of something happening, an opinion that somebody might have of me, somebody doing something to me that might not, somebody taking my money away from me, somebody, an IRS audit, whatever it may be that is fearful, I'm creating those pheromones that you were talking about, those fearful pheromones. I like that. That could be a rock group. The fearful pheromones. Watch, they'll be on TV tomorrow. You create that. When I have that fearful thought, I find myself, I use a technique that I'm writing about in Real Magic, where I just say, I use the word next. Just like, okay, here's that thought, and I say to myself, next. Like that thought, I don't need that fearful thought, or that fearful thought is going to create the very thing that it is that I'm anticipating. So I just remind myself of next, and the stress inside, the anxiety, whatever, seems to dissipate, and I substitute fear with love, with harmony, with bliss, with ease, with whatever you want to call that. And the minute that I do that, the minute that I just shift that thought, my physiology changes. I am creating molecules with my mind that create love and harmony instead of fear, and the problem is gone.
Unconditional love is really nothing more than the absence of fear. The ego is where fears originate, with constant messages that you are incomplete and need more, that you need to win to be better in comparison to others. With its unceasing pressure, the ego keeps you in a constant state of turmoil and anxiety. Here is where all fears are birthed and nurtured within you. To accept unconditional love as your premise for living, you will have to tell the ego that there is no need to prove anything, and that all you want or hope for is already here. With this kind of declaration, fear is removed from your life and is replaced with love. Remember the biblical quote, "Perfect love casteth out all fear." Just as the state of your life is a reflection of your state of mind, so too is the state of the world a reflection of our collective state of mind. Understanding this leads to knowing that we are capable of creating a world of real magic in the same way that I have been encouraging you to create real magic in your own individual life. The universe we live in works in exactly the same way as the universe that is within us. In order to create a world of real magic, it is necessary to know within that this is your job to accomplish. You cannot resign in anguish if others refuse to see the light. Know that you can radiate outwardly all of the messages in this tape and create the kind of real magical world that you envision. One of your biggest challenges may be in refusing to sit in judgment of those things which you perceive to be wrong or imperfect. The perceived inequities in the world are truly part of the perfection of the universe, but so is your desire to end them. If you stand way back in your mind, you will note that a revolution of spiritual dimensions is taking place right now. The Berlin Wall was built to last 1,000 years, yet today it is nothing more than a relic of an ancient non-spiritual past. That shrine of tyranny is but one of many that are toppling faster than we can update the history books. There is a new collective consciousness in the minds of people, and a new spiritual awareness is spreading throughout humanity. Nothing can stop it, for nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Communism, which insists upon atheism from its subjects, has been declared an international failure. Rulers can remove the outer places of worship, but the inner place, that invisible corner of freedom that is ever present in each of us, cannot be legislated. In China, where more than 1 billion souls are temporarily residing, 1 million of those souls face tanks to demonstrate their desire for freedom. And while the messengers can temporarily be imprisoned, the message cannot be halted. These changes are all taking place in the minds of individuals and spreading to other individuals to form a collective consciousness. Once the ideas become present in a large enough number of us, they become our reality. This number is called a critical mass. The force cannot be stopped. Some will try, but they will be swept away by the power of an idea whose time has come. The changes in the world are not restricted to political realignments and new nuclear policies. A new spiritual consciousness toward our environment has manifested itself into action as well. The idea that we should treat the earth with sacred reverence is being translated into physical realities. You are seeing the fruits of these thoughts blooming everywhere. All of the changes that you see taking place around you, which reflect a growing concern for the individual, for a peaceful, safe, harmonious world, are part of a glorious revolution that is taking place first and most importantly in our thoughts. You are a part of that process. Whatever thoughts you have can and will be spread to those around you. You influence the physical world with your thoughts. Of that you should be most convinced, having listened to this tape. If this revolution, this new way of being, is to take hold and overcome all of the remaining non-spirituality that infects the world, it will have to reach a critical mass in all areas of our existence. The most important question to be asking yourself as you look to find your own place in this spiritual revolution is, how do I see the world I live in? If you want, you can deny the spiritual revolution I have described, and instead see a world that is slowly but surely deteriorating into a non-spiritual morass. That will be your experience of the world you live in. Yet those who see the light of the world view the dark spots as merely potential light. Where is your place in the spiritual revolution? You are here on purpose to help make these changes manifest more profoundly and permanently into the consciousness of all of mankind. Your place in this revolution will solidify if you fill yourself with love. You must be able to radiate outward all that you are gaining in your spiritual consciousness. You have the power to do just that if you make that choice. As you do this on your own personal and local level, you will find yourself expanding and reaching more and more people. That is precisely what has been happening with all of the spiritual revolution changes that you see around you. You are truly the world, and your thoughts do make all the difference in this world. Have reverence for your mind. Treat your invisible inner reality with sacred, blissful appreciation. In all that I have said about creating real magic, nothing is more important than your coming into contact with the higher part of yourself. At first, you will very likely reject this notion of yourself as a miracle worker in the worldwide realm of real magic. Increasingly, however, people are believing in their own divinity and trusting in the divine wisdom that created them. They are helping to create the spiritual revolution that is now occurring. You, one person with a vision, are like a pebble in a stream, moving ever outward to infinity, impacting on all who come into contact with that ripple, which creates the spiritual world I believe in so strongly. You make all the difference in the world. Your presence here is a divine necessity, perfect and purposeful. This is your miracle making in action. By aligning yourself with your spiritual side first rather than secondarily, you will radiate out that peace that is within. You will not be dissuaded from your mission just because others are not with you. You will stay focused on what you are for in all areas of your life. The bad news, the emphasis in the media on tragedy and pessimism will not capture your attention. You will note these as areas for improvement, but your inner divine self will be noting also how many acts of healing, kindness, and friendliness outnumber those of suffering. It truly thrills me that I have been able to create this work on real magic from within my mind. It has been a magical journey for me. I shiver inside with the awareness that it can make a difference in your life and in the entire physical world we are all immersed in. My closing quotation is from the ancient writer Philo. Households, cities, countries, and nations have enjoyed great happiness when a single individual has taken heed of the good and beautiful. Such people do not only liberate themselves, they fill those they meet with a free mind. You are that single individual, becoming a spiritual being and taking heed of the good and the beautiful. You will indeed fill yourself and those around you with a new freedom in their minds, the freedom to create real magic. God bless you.
That, most college majors, when you study, there's a very high percentage of people who major in something in college end up doing something completely different. I'm one of them. It's really about allowing. That's how Abraham puts it. It's just about allowing. It's just having a knowing. A knowing means there's a banishment of all doubt. One of the keys to higher awareness, banishing the doubt. Just letting go of that and just allowing it to flow, that there's an opportunity. I was telling my daughter, the one I spoke about earlier, who's had addiction issues and so on, who's trying to just get herself back after this program and get a job. And she said, it's just so hard to get a job. I said, if you just look around, I said, just look around at, within a mile of where you are. And the next day she called me back and she said, Dad, she said, I got a job. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm working at a motel. I said, what are you doing in the motel? She said, whatever it is that they want me to. I just walked in there and said, you know what? I just went through this program and I would just like to do something, like anything at all that I can do. And all of a sudden she's carrying around keys. This is her second day on the job, and she's only getting paid a minimum wage. It doesn't make any difference what she's being paid. The idea is that there are opportunities in every single moment of our life, but if you're filling your mind with it can't happen, it's not for me, this is a tough economy, things are going bad. If this is the way that you think, it's like, what is the slogan that I'm probably best known for? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's a quantum truth. You just change the way you look at it all and say, you walk into a McDonald's and you're working at the French fry machine, and the person that I'm talking about being is thinking, how am I going to own this place? I got to learn French fries first, and then I got to learn how to grill the hamburger, and then I got to learn it all. So I'll just learn all of that, and then I'm going to figure out a way to own this place. And this is how they're thinking. Their mind is constructed that way, instead of looking at the things as wrong and I can't do it and it's not possible and I don't have any opportunities. There are opportunities in every moment. I could go for 2 hours and tell you how the very first book how Your Erroneous Zones got published. In 2 minutes I can tell you that I was given an appointment I took the manuscript that I had written in 1974 that I told you about earlier and took it to my agent, Artie Pine, had arranged for me to have a meeting with a man named Paul Fargus at T.Y. Kroll Company in New York City. And I went there, and Paul was so depressed and so upset, and he was just broken down. And I was a therapist, I had a practice there, and I was there to have him see if he would be willing to publish my book. So it was supposed to be about me. And this man was, you could just see, and I forgot about the manuscript, and I spent 3 hours counseling him and talking to him and telling him, because the night before his wife had said she wanted a divorce. And they had 2 children, and he was just so broken up, he just didn't know if he could even make it. And we talked for a long time. He became one of my best friends, and I talked to him and helped him through that whole process. And my agent called me after the meeting. He said, "So, how did it go? How was your meeting? Are we going to get this book published? You think they'll publish it?" And I said, "Forgot to talk about the book." Never mentioned it. He was so angry at me. It was the only time he was really angry at me. He said, "Do you know what it took for me to get this appointment for you? How, you're a nobody. Nobody even knows who you are. And you're not talking about the book. You've just blown the biggest opportunity you ever had." And that same evening, Paul called Artie and told him, "I don't care what his book's about, I want to publish his book." It's a true story, true story. So it's like, when you forget about yourself, I mean, what's the lesson in that? When you let go of what's in it for me, and the mantra of the ego is, what's in it for me? How much more can I get? What about me? How about me? I want some more. The mantra of the higher self is, how may I serve? What may I do for you? And when you do that, everything shows up for you. That's when you follow your excitement. And when your excitement, what did I say yesterday? When you follow your excitement, you will be supported, and it will be effortless. Because you are now aligned with God. That's what God is, your excitement. What excites you? And what excited me in that moment, back in 1975, when I had that meeting with Paul, what excited me was what excited me every day when I had my practice and my patients would come in and I would talk to them, is helping somebody to get over what seems like a trauma that is just irresolvable. The stewardess was standing there and she said, "Oh, no. Oh, no." She knew who I was. I had been talking to her. She said, this is what I dread." I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "There's 176 people on this plane. Every one of them is going to say something nasty to me when they get off the plane. They're going to blame me, they're going to blame the airline, and they're going to..." I said, "But you don't have to let that in." She said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, you've got 2 packages, 2 suits that are protecting you from anybody coming to you with that disharmony." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you got your uniform." I said, "That's one package, and that's over the other package, which is your body, and then both of those are protecting or covering who you really are, which is how you choose to process all of this and how you choose to think and who you really are." I said, "Each person that comes up by you and says something negative or nasty, you can just let that only be a message to your uniform, to your package. That's not me, and you can remind yourself, they're not talking to me. They can't get to me with that stuff. They can't have that. I don't let anybody come to me unless they come with love or harmony to who I really am." So you can just say, "Well, I'm very sorry," and have a good one. And it's like, and you say, "Well, they didn't get to me, and they didn't get to me. They're not reaching me with that." And sure enough, she stood there and she watched as 176 people got off, and I'd say 150 of them said something nasty to her on the way out. And each time she just sort of smiled and said, "Yes, well, it'll be 2 hours." And she gave them instructions on where to go. And when it was all done, she sat down next to me. She said, "That was fantastic. It's the first time that we've ever had a circumstance like this where I didn't let it bother me." I said, "You don't have to let that stuff into your life." And it's just like in the meditation in the field. When those thoughts start impinging on the field, the pastel that you have created, you don't have to let them in. They bounce. I do it all the time. When I'm driving, and if anybody gives me, I don't take any of that inside. I just say, "Oh, that's them, and that's how they're reacting to my form." Having a quiet mind in a practical sense is really understanding that what I'm talking about is not just for discussion, it's for application. If you're the kind of person who has your mind filled with 10 different things that you have to do, and that is producing anxiety, stress, ulcers, colds, backaches, headaches, cramps, runny noses, all of the kinds of physical reactions and manifestations of that kind of thinking, then you have to look at how can you just get a blank mind, or how can you get a quiet mind? How can you just understand that, supposing you're thinking about, you got to get to work, you've got this report you got to get out, you got to get your taxes done, you got to stop and get some diapers on the way home, now the kids need to have bananas, and they've got dance lessons I've got to get them to, an endless catalog of activities. By using your mind to do that, and to occupy it all the time, none of that is going to get done. See, all of that is going to get done. Regardless, if you're the kind of person who does those things, it's going to get done. The question is, how do you use your present moments? See, anytime you use up your present moment,
Or any time that you are thinking anxious thoughts, you're denying the present. You're using up the present moment instead of using it up in a productive, peaceful, serene, calm way. You are somehow believing that you can't get through this day or this moment any other way, that if I don't think about it and worry about it and be anxious about it. But the fact is, it's going to get done. Your taxes are going to get done. You're not going to jail. You're not the kind of person who's going to opt to just simply not do your taxes. You're going to get the diapers. You're going to get the report done. All of that you're going to get done. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the position that you're in. You would be doing something else, all right? So if you know that it's going to get done, the question is, what's the most efficient and effective and peaceful way to get things done? I use the analogy often of when you're in a hurry, like when your body is in a hurry. That's when you're least effective. And that's when you always drop something. You'll drop the keys and then you'll start sweating. And then when you start sweating, you find yourself getting more upset. You'll forget something. And you'll walk out the door and you'll slam the door, and you left the key on the inside. Now you don't have a key. I've talked about when you take a shower. If you rush through a shower because you only have 5 minutes to take a shower, and you finish and you take your shower and then you dry yourself off, you didn't need to take a shower because you're already dirty again. I mean, you're already sweating. You can take the same 5 minutes and take a shower, if that's all you have. And you can do it peacefully. The same 5 minutes. You can push all of the other stuff out and you can just relax. And if you've got 3 minutes, instead of rushing through it, you can just let the water pour. You can experience the water. You can wash your body. You can dry it all off. And when you finish, you're not sweating. And you had the same amount of time. The nervousness and all of that comes from the way that you decide to process. Now, in the physical world, you understand that if you hurry and rush and are filled with 1,000 different activities, that you have decreased your efficiency. Why isn't the same thing true in the mental world, in your mind? If you are filling your mind with all of the things that you have to do, and you're worried about all of those things and get yourself all consumed with them, then you're still going to be less efficient, less effective, and you're still going to be cluttered. At a moment like that, you put on a tape. If you're going to drive, you got to drive. You can't get the bananas and the diapers and the report done and the IRS taken care of in the car on the freeway. You can't do that then. You're driving. So why not be here now, as Ram Dass says. Be here now. Here's some music. Put on a tape. Meditate right there. Don't close your eyes. But just like push it all out. All of that's going to get handled. But meantime, I'm going to enjoy this. My ride from my home to my office is 17 miles. I love those 17 miles. There's a million things to see in those 17 miles. I cannot write my books or get my speeches. I can't do any of that in that time. But I can enjoy all of that. I can be there with it. I can open the windows and I can let the wind blow on me and I can experience that and enjoy all of that. And when I get to where I'm going, if I've got to get the report done, I'm now prepared to do it. I'm not working on the report thinking about my taxes or getting the diapers or getting the bananas or whatever it may be. I'm here now in the moment. That's what meditating teaches you. Being here now in the moment. Quiet, joyful, peaceful. When you're there and you get your mind trained to do that, that isn't just like something you do for 15 minutes a day just to give you something to do for that 15 minutes. That carries over into everything that you do.
The first is that force always creates a counterforce. Force creates a counterforce, whereas power is always creates grace. Grace and power, over and over again, he reports the research, that power is something that will bring grace, that will bring God, will bring consciousness to the presence of it, whereas force always creates a counterforce. So that when you have a force, that is, if you react with shame, if you try to make your children feel ashamed, what are they going to do back? They resent, and what are they going to try to do to you? Some way of making you feel ashamed as well. It happens every time. You just have to watch it. You try to shame them and watch if they don't try to shame you. You said I couldn't do that, and you have to be punished for that. But you did that. You said this right away. Shame creates more shame. You've created a lowered energy field. They're weakened, you're weakened, and it works not just with shame, but with fear, with anxiety, with anger. Every time we use any of these, a counterforce is created. The second quality is that force is always loud, aggressive, whereas power is silent. That you raise energy levels through silence. And there's very little movement required when you are empowering. Whereas when you get louder, screaming, aggressive, more outgoing, and so on. The third is that force is always moving against something. That's what force is. So whatever it is that you have, we have to move against it. We have to mobilize our forces and defeat it. Whereas power does not move at all. The fourth thing is that force is always incomplete. Therefore, it must be fed energy. You must constantly feed energy of force. You must constantly be talking to it. You must constantly be upgrading it. You must constantly be trying to make it attract more energy. It's always demanding of energy. Whereas power is total and complete, requires nothing from outside itself. Power does not demand anything out there, not any weapons. It doesn't need any arguments to win. Power is that which you are connected to silently. The fifth, force always makes demands. Whenever you are in force, and if you look at any of those emotions and energy levels below 200, you will see that there's a demand to each one of them. Whereas power has no needs whatsoever. It is at peace. The sixth is force is constantly consuming. It has insatiable appetite. It is constantly demanding more. And in the process, it consumes, and in the process of consuming, it destroys. Power is always content, makes no demands, and needs nothing to consume. 7. Force always takes energy away. It takes your energy and takes it with it. Whereas power energizes. It gives forth. It supplies and supports. And it gives life energy. When you go to God, when you go to Spirit, when you go above 200 to any of those levels, what you are doing is you are energizing those around you and sending it out. Whereas when you're in any of the ones below 200, you are taking energy away. The 8th is that force is always associated with judgment and generally makes us feel badly about ourselves. Any of those emotions, any of those thoughts have to do with judging, and ultimately when you experience those thoughts or you're in the presence of someone who is using those thoughts, you will end up feeling badly or worse for the experience. Whereas power is associated with compassion, radical humility, and always makes us feel positive about ourselves. When you encounter someone whose thoughts are above 200, after that encounter, you will feel better for having been in their presence, based upon not just what you talk about, but even the feelings that you have. Whereas when you're associated with or around people who are using the techniques below 200, you feel yourself feeling badly, worse, and depleted of energy. Number 9, force always polarizes because it demands conflict in order to survive. Force and conflict go together. Power, the energy of power above 200 will unify and make you feel more like you belong, a sense of belonging. Number 10, I just put it this way, in force, the cost is always very high because enemies are always being created. Force needs an enemy. It costs to stay in a state of force. Whereas power has no cost whatsoever. It's absolutely free. It's graceful, it's silent, it's easy, it's non-consuming, it makes no demands. The 11th, and I've always been intrigued by this, the 11th quality or characteristic of force always requires proof because it's literal and it's therefore arguable. Whereas power deals with intangibles. And it knows that health is better than disease. It doesn't need any proof of that. It knows that honor is better than dishonor. It knows that faith is better than doubt, and that being constructive is better than destructive. And you don't need a chi-square, and you don't need an analysis of variance, and you don't need a statistical test to be able to prove it, and you don't need to argue about it. There's an awareness that is internal, that is instinctive, that says, I don't have to go out there and show anything. It's why it's quiet. I know it is better to be honorable than it is to be dishonorable. I know it is better to be honest than to steal. I don't need proof of that. I know that it is better to be healthy than to be in a state of disease. I know that life is better than death. I know this. I don't have to prove it. I don't have to explain it. I live in a consciousness of empowerment in which I don't have to go through and look outside of myself to validate whether these things that I know instinctively and intuitively are correct.
When we take this power of this invisible part of us, it's so hard to define this. We call it a belief, or you call it a thought, or you call it your soul, or your spirit, or whatever. But that invisible part of you that really determines everything about your life. And you begin to say to yourself, how can I apply the awareness of these thoughts and how I use my mind to make my life all that I want it to be, to bring into my life the things that are important to me, to improve the quality of my relationships, to have the success and so on that I think that I'm entitled to. And it's really getting to the point where you know that every thought that you have has a potential for coming into your life, for coming into form. You start to get real cautious about having anything in your mind that isn't going to work for you, and question why you would keep any of those thoughts in you. I can remember one story of a woman who came to me one time and told me how miserable she was, that she was married to a drunk. And I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, well, he slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and it's just awful to be around him. And I said, let's see if I understand. Let's see who's crazy in this little scenario you've just described. Now, you said you've married to a drunk, and the drunk slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and he sounds foolish. I said, that's every drunk I've ever known does exactly that. We got a drunk who's acting and doing everything that you would expect a drunk to do. Now we got you, and you're married to someone that you call a drunk, and you're expecting him to be sober. You know, now who's crazy? The drunk who's doing what he's supposed to, or you who's expecting someone who is what you've defined him to be something different than what they are? He is what he is. And why would you want to entertain, why would you want to keep thoughts in your mind that are making you miserable, which is going to expand misery for you in your life by just having those thoughts? Why not change around those thoughts and tell yourself that you're, like, if you argue for your misery, then the only thing you're going to get is your misery. You have to get that, and you're arguing for it all the time. You're going around talking about how miserable you are. So you want to get real careful about that. And I suggest to every one of you that whatever it is you find yourself incapable of doing, or whatever you found that has been a great obstacle, or whatever it is that's in a relationship that isn't working, that you just can't seem to transcend, or whatever's going on with a particular employee, or a way that you're approaching anything in your business, that if you examine, just for a moment, if you examine what belief is it that supports this behavior, because the ancestor to every action is a belief, is a thought, and then work at re-examining that. I mean, I've done that so many times in my own life, and things that don't seem like they're that important to other people. Like, my wife doesn't understand why certain things about my tennis game that I play every day that I've really challenged. I mean, I grew up with the belief that I couldn't hit a backhand. And it was for 10 years I told myself that I don't have a backhand. I can't hit a backhand. And then I began to change that belief around. And it wasn't that I just, practice. I began to visualize myself doing all the things that it takes to make a backhand work for myself. I began to do that with a serve. I began to do that with a drop shot. Instead of telling myself, I can't hit a drop shot, and then acting out on that, and a whole match will go by, and a whole year will go by, and I'll never hit a drop shot, or I'll never hit a lob, or I'll never try a spin serve, or whatever. If you keep telling yourself that you can't do something, you act on that belief, and whether it's just a silly little thing like improving your tennis game, which isn't so silly if you're making your living off of it or if you're coaching it, or any other skill area, or anything in your life. Change around the thought, as you think, so shall you be.
And it's something I'd like to suggest to you when I talk about you can't give away what you don't have. That whatever it is that you are giving away in the way of being offended or being an appreciator, and by the way, appreciation versus depreciation is the highest form of energy that you can have to your thoughts. In other words, every time you have a thought of depreciation, you have weakened yourself in some form. Any kind of a thought of depreciation. Whereas if you can shift a thought of depreciation into one of appreciation, even for that which you have been conditioned to believe deserves to be depreciated, if you can figure out a way to change and alter your thoughts, then you move into a higher energy. But more than moving into a stronger and a higher energy with appreciation, is that you move into a level of consciousness called synchronicity, in which you start to negotiate the presence of energy to serve as an attractor pattern. And that what I'm speaking about, solid energy as the lowest form of energy, and spiritual energy as the highest and the fastest form of energy, and that spiritual energy, the energy of love, the energy of cheerfulness, the energy of kindness, the energy of peace, when this energy is brought to the presence of the energy in which you have problems, lower energy, that these problems dissolve, they can't survive any more than darkness can survive in the face of light, then there is some kind of a gap that you have to negotiate between the world of problem energy and the world of higher energy. But what you have to look at here, when I say you can't give away what you don't have, is to ask yourself, if I can't give away what I don't have, it means that I am giving away what I do have. And because it's the only thing I can give away. I have to have it to give it away. So, and if energy is the vehicle upon which things are attracted and come into my life, then what is it that I am sending out there, because it is in giving that we receive, what is it that I'm giving? What am I sending out there? What kind of energy do I send out there? And begin to look at that as the rationale and the explanation and the reasoning behind what is showing up in your life. That it really has nothing to do with what's going on outside of you in other people and in other events and in what other people are saying or doing or circumstances of your life. As much as we like to use that as an explanation and a rationale for it, that in fact, if you can change around your thinking to ask yourself, why do I keep attracting what it is that I'm attracting into my life, and what can I do to attract something different into my life? These things that we're calling attractor energies, that possibly, just possibly, I might be able to come to a place where I recognize that everything that's going on in my life, everything, I take responsibility for. And if I continue to attract the wrong people, or scarcity instead of abundance, or illness instead of health, or unhappiness rather than happiness, or fear rather than faith. And again, I always go back to that very famous prayer of St. Francis, where there is doubt, let me bring faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Where there is hatred, love. And if I can find a way to rid myself of those, just the thoughts, that I might possibly open myself up to a new idea, a mind that is open to everything, is one in which I say that I have been responsible for attracting all of these things into my life, and now I'm going to work at it for a given period of time of attracting something different into my life. I'm going to go with new attractor patterns of energy. I'm just going to go with it and see if I can make that shift begin to take place. And this thing that I have referred to as synchronicity is something that Jung said is something that is very real and is very powerful and is something that you can access. Which means that as you reach a faster energy yourself, you see, if everything is energy and nothing happens until something moves and everything is moving, then you yourself are just a great big bundle of energy. You are just vibrating, and if you are a bundle of energy, if you buy this idea that your hand and your feet and your eyes and your entire body is really nothing more than a series of very, very tiny subatomic particles all moving together very fast with spaces between them, and you see that and you can get that, then you recognize that there's got to be a frequency at which you are vibrating. It's got to be vibrating at some frequency. And if you can also accept the idea that if I could move to a faster and a higher, more spiritual energy, that I will literally change the vibration at which I am vibrating, then it begins with the thoughts. It begins with how I am processing and thinking thoughts, that I can absolutely get to a place where I can start to radiate out different kinds of energy.
If I had a woman from Holland who came over to see me, whose husband had left her after 25 years. She had 4 children, and she just had been on the verge of suicide. And she was losing weight, and she was depressed, and she was taking all kinds of drugs for it, and she was getting sicker and sicker because she just couldn't get over it. And she came to a book signing that I was doing at a bookstore down in Florida. And she said, "You've got to say something to me. You've got to say something to me that will help me to get over this." And I told her this line. I said, "Give up your personal history. Merge yourself here, now, into this moment. And those 25 years are something, if you want to understand how to do it, think of your past as, this hat. And this is your past. Now you can't just set this thing down over here and walk away from it and give up your personal history, because you'll always have it there to look back at. What you do is you pick up your past and you embrace it. You understand it, you accept it, as I had to go through these things that I had to go through in order for me to get to this place today, and the evidence for that is that I did. You don't need any more evidence. You did. And then you toss it. You toss it. You embrace it, and you toss it. And you merge into the now by giving up your attachment. And some of you have heard me use the metaphor of the wake. Alan Watts talked about the wake is not what drives the boat. The wake is just a trail that is left behind. That's all it is. And so is the wake of your life. And the wake doesn't make the boat go, and neither does the wake of your life the reason why your life is going in the direction that it is. The wake is a trail that is left behind, and it's an illusion to believe that it is the cause of your suffering or your struggles or your difficulty. Give it up. Let it go. Embrace it, understand it, get help doing that if you must, and then move into the now. Wisdom is avoiding all thoughts which weaken you. You know, every thought has an energy, just like everything else in the universe. And if you have a thought of shame, it will weaken your muscles. And what is your heart but a muscle? If you raise a child to believe in shame and feel ashamed of themselves, every time they think that shameful thought, they will be weakened. And if you have a thought of fear, and if you have a thought of stress, and you have a thought of anguish and anxiety, all of these thoughts and many more are the thoughts that will always weaken you. When you are having a thought that you know is disempowering you, shift it. Shift it to one that is empowering rather than disempowering. And the thoughts that empower are thoughts of neutrality and willingness and love, and ultimately thoughts of divinity. And when you see a troubled person who is out there struggling, At the highest level of unity consciousness or God consciousness, or spiritual consciousness, you recognize yourself in all that you see. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And I am connected to that person. Changing your thoughts. I appeared on the Tonight Show many years ago, several times, quite a few times. And I remember coming home from the Tonight Show, and I was walking along the beach, and they had taped the show the night before, and I was out for a walk, and a woman who lived in the Northeast stopped me, and she said, "Didn't I see you last night on the, how could you be here?" I said, "Well, I flew the red eye, and I was walking along." She said, "You know, we're moving down here." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like?" And I said to her, I said, "Well, what are they like where you live?" She said, "Well," she said, I live in a very big city." And she said, "They're very pushy. And people are not very kind. And they don't have time for you." And she said, "It's really not very pleasant." She said, "That's one of the reasons I'm leaving there." I said, "Well, that's pretty much what you're going to find here." That's basically what the people are like here. On the way back on the same day, someone else who had seen me the night before on the Tonight Show, who had lived in the Midwest, stopped me and asked me almost the same question. She said, "You live here?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, my husband and I are moving here and we're looking for a school." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like here?" I said, "What are they like in Chicago where you live?" She said, "It's the Midwest." She said, "People are very friendly, they're open, they open their homes to you, they're very loving, they're very kind." She said, "It's a wonderful place." She said, "I love that. I'm going to really miss that." I said, "That's pretty much what you're going to find here." It's what you expect. It's what you think about that expands. It's what Emerson taught us. The ancestor to every action is a thought. Change your thoughts, and you change your world. Change your expectations, and you change around what you begin to manifest and see showing up in your life.
I have been accused over the years in the critical press of providing false hope to people. People will call, and I'll be on a talk show on the radio someplace in the world, and someone will call in who's been diagnosed with a terminal illness of some kind, and I will talk to them about not buying into the diagnosis. About why would you just listen to a group of people who have a vested interest in convincing you of this impending doom in your life, and the law that has ever allowed any miracle to ever take place in the history of humanity is still on the books. It hasn't been repealed, so that energy, whatever it is, whoever has ever healed themselves of a diagnosis of terminal illness, used the same kind of energy that is in you. And so people say, well, that's providing false hope and so on. And I remember. Again, to speak about Michelangelo, I mean, these people that I selected for, or that selected me for Wisdom of the Ages, I feel after studying their lives in depth and looking at not only what they had to say, but what they were like, I mean, I feel like you're talking about my grandfather or something when you speak about Michelangelo. And again, in Florence, when we went to Florence, I said, I'm just going to go see the statue of David. And I thought, well, I'll just look at this statue. Everybody has to see David.
Yes.
And I walked in there, and you go through this long corridor, and you see all of these slaves on either side that are coming out of the concrete that were all sculpted by Michelangelo. And then you come into this room that's all lit, and then there's this statue, this magnificent statue, and it's 18 feet high. And it is the most astounding thing I've ever seen. And I'm not a big art critic or even going to art shows and sculpture and all that. I enjoy it, but it's not something that I have a passion about.
Yes.
Well, 4 hours later, Michael, I was still standing in front of that statue. My wife and my 3 daughters were out climbing El Duomo and buying shoes and doing all the things that you do when you're in Italy.
Right.
And they came back and they said, "Dad, come on, we have to leave." And I felt like I couldn't leave that place. It was such a beautiful experience. I mean, you can see every vein in the in this thing, and it's just a magnificent experience. So when they ask, there's this wonderful quote that they ask Michelangelo, how could you have created
such a perfect specimen of sculpture from one piece of marble. His famous quote is that David was already in the marble. I just chipped away the excess.
Yes.
And that there's a David inside each and every one of us.
Yes.
And this idea of if you're, the greater danger is not that our hopes are too high and we fail to reach them, it's that they are too low and we do. And most people see themselves in terms, they don't see, I think you should see yourself as a saint. And I think a person ought to be envisioning themselves as capable of doing anything. I think it's possible to excel in every area of life. That is, you don't have to sort of restrict yourself to one area. I think you can enjoy going to a National Football League game in the afternoon and going to the ballet in the evening.
Yes.
When people say, well, you're a speaker, usually speakers, and you get paid a lot for speaking, so usually speakers are not good writers, or because one is introverted and supposedly and one is extroverted. And I have often thought, why can't you be a really fine writer and a great speaker as well?
Sure.
And why can't you be a great athlete and a poet as well? Why not? And most of these people, like Goethe and Michelangelo and Da Vinci and Shakespeare and Pope and so many of these people, these were people who were masters at 1,000 different things. Isn't that interesting? How we, like in medicine now, I mean, now you have a specialist who specializes in the right finger,
Right, exactly.
Yes. We have hand specialists, we have foot specialists, and nose specialists, and imagine going to school for years and studying only the hand.
Yes.
Whereas here was Da Vinci or Michelangelo, and they studied, they were anatomists. I mean, they studied anatomy, and were medical people. They studied the way that Michelangelo learned about, how to do sculpture was by examining cadavers. They would literally steal the cadavers and go through, and he would examine them. And it's like when you discover the greatness that's in yourself, and not restricting yourself in any way. And not enough of us can think of ourselves as being able to excel in all areas and to have high hopes about virtually everything. Because high hopes is not just a song that Frank Sinatra sang with a bunch of kids. High hopes is being able to visualize and see for yourself what it is that you'd like to be able to accomplish in your life.
Every single person on the planet has within them the potential to be a healer. In order to make conscious contact with your inherent healing powers, you must first make the decision to be healed yourself. Reconnect to the disease-free, loving perfection from which you came is a succinct statement of what self-healing process requires. The universal mind of intention knows precisely what you need in order to optimize your health. What you must do is notice your thoughts and your behaviors, which are creating resistance and interfering with healing, which is the flow of intentional energy. Recognizing your resistance is something that's entirely up to you. That source is never focused on what's wrong, what's missing, or even what's sickly. True healing takes you back to the source. Anything short of this connection is just a temporary fix. When you clean up the connecting link to your source, attractor patterns of energy are drawn to you. If you don't believe that this is possible, then you've created resistance to your intention to heal and to be healed. If you believe that it is possible, but not for you, then you have more resistance. If you believe that you're being punished by the absence of health, that's also resistance. These inner thoughts about your ability to be healed play a dominant role in your physical experience. Becoming a healer by healing oneself involves another one of those imaginary somersaults into the inconceivable, where you land upright and balanced in your thoughts, face to face with your source. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that you and your source are one when you let go of the ego mind, which has convinced you that you're separate from the power of intention. From thoughts of sickness to intentions of wellness. The decision to create is the decision to intend. To create healing, you can't have thoughts of illness and anticipate your body falling victim to disease. Become aware of the thoughts you have that support the idea of sickness as something to be expected. Begin noticing the frequency of those thoughts. The more they occupy your mental landscape, the more resistance you're creating to realizing your intention. You know what those thoughts of resistance sound like. I can't do anything about this arthritis. It's the flu season. I feel okay now, but by the weekend it'll be in my chest and I'll have a fever. We live in a carcinogenic world. Everything is either fattening or filled with chemicals. I feel so tired all of the time. On and on and on these thoughts of resistance go. They're like huge barricades blocking the realization of your intentions. Notice the thoughts that represent a decision on your part to buy into the illness mentality of the huge profit-making drug companies and a healthcare industry that thrives on your fears. But you are the divine, remember? You are a piece of the universal mind of intention, and you don't have to think in these ways. You can opt to think that you have the ability to raise your energy level even if all of the advertising around you points to a different conclusion. You can go within and hold an intention that says, I want to feel good. I intend to feel good. I intend to return to my source, and I refuse to allow any other thoughts of disorder or disease in. This is the beginning. You'll feel empowered by this unique experience. Then in any given moment of not feeling well, choose thoughts of healing and feeling good. In that instant, feeling good takes over, if only for a few seconds. Illness is not a punishment. You don't have a need for healing because you were bad or ignorant or as retribution for past life offenses. You've taken on whatever you're experiencing for whatever lessons you need to learn on this journey, which is being orchestrated by the all-providing intelligence that we're calling intention. In an eternal universe, you must view yourself and all others in infinite terms. Infinite terms means that you have an infinite number of opportunities to show up in a material body to co-create anything. As you view the sickness of the mind and body that permeates your own life as well as the rest of humanity, try viewing it as part of the infinite nature of our world. If starvation, pestilence, or disease are a part of the perfection of the universe, then so is your intention to end these things a part of that same perfection. Now decide to stay with that intention, first in your own life, then in the lives of others. Your intention will match up with the intention of the universe, which knows nothing of egos and separation, and all thoughts of illness as punishment and karmic paybacks will cease to exist. You can't heal anyone until you allow yourself to be healed. Connect to a loving, kind, receptive to healing energy, which is the field that intended you here. Be willing to accept the fact that you're a part of the healing energy of all of life. The same force that heals a cut on your hand and grows the new skin to repair it permanently is both in your hand and in the universe as well. You are it. It is you. There's no separation. Be conscious of staying in contact with this healing energy because it's impossible to separate from it except in your ego-diminished thoughts. By raising your energy to a vibrational match with the field of intention, you're strengthening your immune system and increasing the production of well-being enzymes in the brain. A change in personality from being spiteful, pessimistic, angry, sullen, and disagreeable to one of passion, optimism, kindness, joy, and understanding is often the key when witnessing miraculous acts of spontaneous recovery from what were called fatalistic prognostications. Don't ask to be healed, ask to be restored to that perfection from which you emanated. Let nothing interfere with the intention that you have to heal and be healed. Discard all negativity that you encounter. Refuse to let in any energy that will weaken your body or your resolve. Convey this to others as well. Remember, you're not asking your source to heal you because this assumes health is missing from your life. Come to the source as whole and complete. Banish all thoughts of illness and know that by connecting back to this source, filling yourself with it and offering it to others, you become healing itself. How would we think and act in daily life if we were truly aware of our divine essence? Obviously, there wouldn't be room to reproach yourself because we wouldn't doubt our abilities. In fact, we'd never look in the mirror and feel anything but love and appreciation. We'd see ourselves as fully capable of attracting all we desire. We'd treat our body with reverence and care, giving thanks for its divine design. We'd celebrate every thought we have, knowing its divine origin, and we'd become aware of our enormous talents and be awed by all that we are. We need to encourage the awareness of our magnificence in every regard. When that awareness has been reawakened, the seedlings of inspiration will begin blossoming. Here's a way of expressing these fundamental truths offered by the writings of the Baha'i Faith. This most great, this fathomless and surging ocean is near, astonishingly near, unto you. Behold, it is closer to you than your life vein. Swift as the twinkling of an eye you can, if you but wish it, reach and partake of this imperishable favor, this God-given grace, this incorruptible gift, this most potent and unspeakably glorious bounty. There's no way to be in spirit without a changed awareness. So when we accomplish this, we give ourselves the gift of moving from being flawed, limited, lacking, and imperfect to being completely comfortable with our magnificence. This unspeakably glorious bounty is so close to us, all we have to do is make a few twinkling of an eye adjustments. So why not begin right now? Here are 3 of the most obvious and important changes in awareness that you can make. 1. Changing the awareness of our magnificent talents and abilities. I want to emphasize an extremely important point. I'm not talking about self-esteem here, nor am I referring to levels of confidence. Rather, I'm saying that we need to keep the important question, who am I, in the forefront of our mind. This question doesn't revolve around previous life experiences, has nothing to do with what we've been told our special qualities or unique abilities are, and it isn't related to how worthy or worthless we feel about ourselves. It has to do with a simple truth. As Epictetus, a philosopher in the 1st century AD, said, "You carry a God about within you, poor wretch, and know nothing of it." Just like Epictetus, who was born into slavery yet became one of our most profound teachers, we came into this world with an inexhaustible supply of talent. Our abilities are as limitless as God's are, because we're a distinct portion of the essence of Him. And there's an infallible way to begin entertaining those abilities and creating as He does. That way is to become aware that anything that excites us is a clue that we have the ability to pursue it. Anything that truly intrigues us is evidence of a divine, albeit latent, talent that's signaling our awareness. Having an interest in something is the clue to a thought that's connected to our calling. That thought is a vibration of energy in this vast universe. If something really appeals to us and we feel excited but perceive ourselves as devoid of the talent we think is necessary, it's probably an even higher vibration. Anything that's causing excitement within us is evidence of a spirit message that's saying, "You can do this. Yes, you can." If we react to this message with anything other than, "You're correct, I can do this, I have the ability to do it," then we've selected the vibration of resistance and ignored the vibration of excitement and interest that spoke to us. Our thoughts about who we are, what excites us, and what we feel called to be and do are all divinely inspired and come with whatever guidance and assistance we'll need to actualize these goals. The decision at this point is, are we willing to listen to these divine thoughts that pique our interest, or do we go on listening to the false self that's made us what Epictetus called a poor wretch? Rather than case studies of which I have only second-hand knowledge, I'm going to use some examples from my own life that illustrate listening to the false self. My background would appear to be an unlikely one for what I'm calling magnificence. Here's what it would look like on paper. Fathered by an alcoholic who abandoned his 3 children, childhood years spent in foster homes, a classic underachiever, educated in public schools, grew up at the low end of the socioeconomic scale, no financial advantages, no examples of or ambitions for higher education, 4 years as an enlisted man in the United States Navy, admitted to a university on a provisional acceptance at the age of 22 due to lower than average grades in high school, worked his way through 3 advanced degrees by being a cashier and a stock boy in a grocery store in Detroit. This isn't exactly what you'd call a prescription for becoming the best-selling author of 28 books and a successful public speaker. I couldn't begin to tell you how many teachers of creative writing and speech gave me low grades for my efforts in these fields. All I can say for certain is that I've always had a knowing about my interest in writing, have always been excited by the prospect of entertaining and informing an audience, any audience. By all of the accepted standards, I didn't have any writing ability. What I did have, and still do, was an interest and a passion for writing. It inspired and thrilled me, and I simply loved it. From the perspective of inspiration, I had the ability to do it, and that's all I needed to know. Then as now, I trusted that the universe would handle all of the details, including, will I be published? Will the critics approve? Will my book be a bestseller? Will my mother approve? Will I get an apology from any of my old English teachers? But really, who cares about any of this? The fact that writing excites me is all I've ever needed to know. When I follow that thought and stay with it, I conclude that I have the ability and the talent. And so do you. Like me, it's easy to find what excites you. What do you find intriguing? Does learning yoga and becoming an instructor interest you? Then you have your answer. The issue isn't about ability, it's about being matched up in spirit with your current thoughts and behaviors.